So I'll go ahead and get us started so that we can be efficient and get back. There will be more food and drink afterwards. So welcome to the BCR Wealth Strategies for Success. This is the third time we've done this. In the first conversation, we discussed how to employ tax-smart investing in a portfolio. And the most recent one, we heard about your investments in this frictional political atmosphere we've got going in 2024. So when we asked this last time what people wanted to hear about, we heard resoundingly the number one selection was enhancing your charitable giving. So that's why we are here today. At BCR, I've been very fortunate. We've got some really charitably inclined clients who give a lot back. We manage investment accounts for community organizations, family foundations, donor-advised funds, and support the community in many other ways. When I think about giving charity myself, I really think about two major things that I want to enhance. Number one, I want to make sure that I'm maximizing the impact that I'm making to the community. And number two, I want to make sure I'm getting the maximum tax benefit from that contribution. Why would I be focused on that? So if your goal is to be charitable, then maximizing your tax benefit allows you to either be more charitable or to focus your dollars on other goals that you have. Unless, of course, your other goal is to give a lot of money to the government in taxes. So thinking about where we sit today in 2024, the past couple years, some of you may have realized that you could do an above the line and tax deduction of up to $600 before you had to look at itemizing. You can't do that anymore. Also, though, this year, a married couple has a $29,200 standard deduction, which means less and less people are itemizing and getting the benefit of giving money to charity. So every year is different. The laws keep changing on how your charitable giving impacts your taxes. And so we have to constantly be aware and thinking about what we're doing. Right now we're seeing three major areas that are most beneficial, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight, because we're going to focus tonight on annual giving. First, donating appreciated securities. 2, qualified charitable distributions. And 3, donor-advised funds. And after some of the team members go through those 3 opportunities, we're going to have a fireside chat with some of the community organizations that can help enhance both tax impact and help you maximize the impact you're making within the community. So with that, Lindsay Birchfield.
I'm going to talk about donating appreciated stock. This is something that, when you decide you want to give to a charitable organization, your first instinct may be to think of whatever cash you have on hand and how best to get it to that organization. However, that's not giving cash. Writing a check is not the only way to make a monetary donation. So here, see, I have a very legitimate $100 bill and a fake stock certificate. Won't get you very far, but for this example, if I give Dave from Alabama Goodwill and Lauren from CJFS, let's say the stock certificate is worth $100, then you have that $100 bill. It's the same benefit to the organization you're giving it to, but giving cash, you're missing out on realizing long-term capital gains and paying taxes on shares when you get those shares to an organization. So, a good rule of thumb is, as lots of financial planners in the room, is to donate shares strategically. So if you decide you want to donate, say, 10 shares of a stock to an organization, well then use the cash you have on hand that you were probably already thinking of donating to the organization and just buy those same shares back in your account. Then you have the same value, just at a higher cost basis. So organizations appreciate both, but to avoid some taxes for you in the future, think about donating appreciated stock.
So another way that we see clients give to charity would be through what's called a qualified charitable distribution, or a QCD. To take a step back just for a moment and think about this. So while you're working, you contribute to a retirement account, a traditional 401k, traditional IRA, and you get a tax deduction for doing so. Once you retire, obviously you're going to take a distribution to live on, and it's taxed as income. Well, if you are 70 and a half and you've been taking distributions from your retirement accounts and then giving to charity, you can begin doing what's called a QCD, a qualified charitable distribution. Again, that's at 70 and a half. You might be asking, well, why wouldn't I just take the distribution? I'm going to get the tax deduction anyway. Well, as you heard earlier from Marshall, the standard deduction is quite high for 2024. So there's a good chance that your itemized deduction for your charitable contribution is not going to reach the threshold of, say, $29,200 for married filing jointly. And so you'd prefer to just not have the income in the first place and do what's called the QCD. Limiting your income is important for a number of things, especially in retirement. When you think about Social Security is taxed up to 85%. Based on your income. You also have things like your Medicare premiums or tax credits that you qualify for that are all important things that are impacted by income. So again, you would prefer to take the QCD. The next thing is you want to confirm that the charity does actually receive the donation. That does happen where people end up sending in a 1099 to their tax preparer and they didn't identify, hey, I did a QCD. So the best way to do that is to make sure the charity does receive it and then that you get that confirmation in writing. Something else to mention, that there is $105,000 per person that you can do per year in QCDs. So if you're married filing jointly, there's $105,000 for each of you. To throw another acronym at you, it would be the RMDs, and that's the required minimum distribution. So depending on your year of birth determines the age in which you must start taking funds out of your pre-tax 401k or your pre-tax IRA. If you're born after 1960, it's 75. The same is true as the QCD, where you can take funds directly out of the retirement account. It can't touch your bank account. It has to go directly to the charity. It's considered a QCD, right? Well, with an RMD, it satisfies the RMD. It's not considered income for you, and the charity knows no different. They receive it just like they would a check coming from your bank account. So that was a lot of acronyms. I probably spoke pretty quickly. QCD, RMD, IRA. Next up is Jake to talk about donor advised funds, or DAF. So, thank you.
Yeah, so like Tim mentioned, I've got one more acronym for you. DAF, or DAF, stands for Donor Advised Fund. You should have received a handout kind of like this in your chair when you came in. It's going to help me kind of walk through what a donor advised fund is, how it works, and what the different benefits are from it. If you look at the front of this page, it's got this little graphic that kind of explains how it works. Basically, a donor creates a fund and then is able to contribute cash, appreciated securities, or other investments into the fund. In exchange for that contribution, they receive a charitable tax deduction equal to the amount that they contributed. And then the donor is able to advise the fund, kind of hence the name, on where to make charitable grants on their behalf to benefit the charities that they select. One of the key benefits to a donor advised fund is once the money is in the account, it can be invested, and the growth on those investments is tax-free. And you're also able to leave those investments in the account to continue to grow for as long as you'd like. So that allows you to grow your investments and then eventually make an even larger charitable contribution down the road in the future. Lindsay talked earlier about the strategy of gifting appreciated securities. This is a strategy that's made a lot simpler when you use a donor advised fund to do it. I'm going to kind of steal her example of the stock certificate. So let's say I purchased this stock for $100. and it's appreciated up to $200. So the gain on that, if I were to sell it and contribute cash to the charities, would be a $100 capital gain, which I would like to avoid. But say, for example, I want to make a $200 charitable contribution, except the catch is I want to make a $100 contribution to Alabama Goodwill, and another $100 contribution to Colette Jewish Family Services. So there's not an easy way for me to kind of split this certificate in half and make the $100 contribution to each. So what I would do is call up George and Sarah and tell them that I want to open a donor advised fund, and then I would take them this stock certificate and request that they exchange it for $100 to, has to come directly from the donor advised fund. I'm actually not allowed to touch it again. I'm going to make sure you instruct the donor advised fund to contribute it to the charities of your choice. So yeah, that's one of the benefits. Another benefit of the donor advised fund, similar situation, maybe you're working with a smaller charity that doesn't have a process in place to receive donated stock. This is another great option to give them a cash donation through your donor advised fund. From the charity's point of view, it's basically the exact same thing. They, instead of receiving a cash donation from Jake Drum, they receive a cash donation from the Jake Drum Charitable Fund. So basically the same thing that way from the charity's point of view. Another tax strategy that's made a lot simpler by using a donor advised fund is what we call itemized deduction bunching. This is the process of taking multiple years worth of charitable deductions in a single year, basically pulling them all into the first year. There's a couple examples of that on the back of your handout that I will kind of walk through with you. Bear with me, I know it's a lot of numbers on the back of that. So if you look at the top right chart, this is kind of the base case scenario. You look at all the itemized deductions. This shows you giving charitable contributions of $7,000 per year for 6 years. And that's a total of $42,000 over that 6-year period. But if you add up the itemized deductions for each of those years individually, they never exceed the standard deduction in any given year. So you never get any additional tax benefit from that charitable contribution. So one of the solutions that we have for that is the chart to the left of that. And this basically shows taking those $7,000 per year of annual contributions, pulling them all into year one. So year one is a $42,000 contribution. When you add that with the other itemized deductions, you exceed the standard deduction now in year one by $32,800. And if you're in the highest tax bracket, you can see the tax benefit there, a little bit over $12,000 in year one. On top of that, typically the people that are doing this are doing it because they have maybe a one-time event, a large bonus at work, they sell their business, that puts them in a higher tax bracket. So now you're getting that larger deduction against a higher tax bracket also, which increases the benefit. There's also some time value of money concept that'll, taking that deduction in year one versus over the course of 6 years is a lot more beneficial. The only issue with that is sometimes people do not have $42,000 or 6 years of charitable contributions available in the first year. So the solution is the scenario below it. Chart on the bottom left is that same base case scenario, $7,000 per year of charitable giving, but it never exceeds the standard deduction, so you never get additional tax benefits from it. And then the chart on the bottom right shows bunching your charitable contributions into every other year, so it doesn't require as much cash up front. Year one, you would do $14,000, then you would skip year two, $14,000 year three, skip year four, so on. So that way, every other year, you exceed the standard deduction, and you do get a tax benefit in every other year. If you look at that over a 6-year period, at the bottom left, or the bottom right, when you're looking at it, you get just under a $4,000 benefit over 6 years. So it's still a very effective tax strategy. Sorry, I know that was a lot of numbers. But hopefully we've kind of convinced you of some of the tax and convenience benefits of donor advised funds. Now you might be asking, where do you open this type of account? How do you open this type of account? We typically guide our clients to two different options, either a national foundation like the Renaissance Charitable Foundation or a local community foundation like the Community Foundation of Greater Birmingham or the Birmingham Jewish Foundation. But I'll turn it over to Sarah, George, and Marshall to get into the details of those different donor advised fund providers.
Thank you, Jake. So hopefully, we knew that some people here knew kind of the details of how this stuff works. Some people didn't. Hopefully that's given everybody kind of a base to work off of and understand kind of what we're talking about. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. So welcome up Sarah Cohen Gottlieb, the Executive Director of the Birmingham Jewish Foundation. Sarah grew up here in Birmingham. Philanthropy and volunteering as leaders has long been a commitment that her family showed her growing up here. Sarah has worked in Jewish nonprofits in Los Angeles, Phoenix, St. Petersburg, and recently we got her back here in Birmingham, where she continues her family legacy of improving our community. George Gaskin is the Director of Gift Planning at the Community Foundation of Greater Birmingham. He's been in that role since 2019. A Birmingham native as well. George went to Vanderbilt for both undergrad and law school. George initially practiced law as an estate and elder planning attorney and currently serves on the boards of Alabama Association of Charitable Gift Planners and Highlands United Methodist Church Child Development Center. So, as I said, this hopefully gave everybody a base to work off and understand kind of the different moving pieces. Anything that you guys would want to clarify to make sure before we get started we're all in the same place?
I just want to make sure that you got the money that you needed up here.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
$100 bill in the stock.
So to start, maybe we'll start with you, Sarah. What does the typical donor look like for the donor advised funds?
For donor advised funds at the Birmingham Jewish Foundation. So you can probably imagine that we have a lot of Jewish donors, but we also have Jewish adjacent donors and we also have non-Jewish donors. We are a small team and we get to really know our donors. So there's some people who've come to us who are not Jewish because they like sort of that concierge boutique feel. We have donors all over the state, actually, mostly here in Birmingham, but we have chunks of donors in Huntsville and Florence and Auburn and Tuscaloosa and Anniston even. You can imagine these smaller Jewish communities are dying out, and so there's assets that need to be managed, and we want to be the place that takes care of that. Then something else that our donors, when you say they look like, they don't. I'm not describing what they look like at all, but our donors also really like that at the Birmingham Jewish Foundation, we take our management fee and we put it back into running our foundation, but also giving out innovation grants to the Jewish community primarily. So it's like a donation back into our community is how we see it. And as I was talking about the boutique, one of the things we're working on right now is you can call us, we'll take care of anything, but we're also building our own donor portal. So if you're the kind of person that doesn't want to talk to a human, we can help you then too. So.
George, same question. What does your typical donor look like?
Yeah, I think, typically our donors are local people in Birmingham, people who have made their money in Birmingham. They recognize and they're grateful for the opportunities that Birmingham has given them, and they really want to invest back in Birmingham. I think it's a lot of people who recognize us as a partner with their charitable giving. I think they want to leverage kind of our expertise on our local community's greatest needs, interesting projects going on, what the nonprofit community is doing, who really kind of want to leverage that knowledge and get more strategic with their giving. And I'd say, kind of like Sarah mentioned, people that appreciate the concierge service that we offer. They can pick up a phone, they know our names, we're going to email them back the same day. We'll go to their house and pick up a check if they're more comfortable donating that way. But really, I think ultimately somebody who wants to give back to Birmingham.
Thank you. George, I'll stick with you.
Okay.
So what is your typical donor looking for?
Okay, so I'm going to repeat myself a little bit. So
Sure.
they're looking to really go deeper, plugging into what are the big issues facing Birmingham and holding people back here. And so I think they want to get more strategic, learn more about the community needs. With donor advised funds at the Community Foundation, you don't have to just give in Birmingham. So there are also people that, they want to give to national organizations, they want to give to their college, they can still do that. But I think ultimately they're still looking to kind of make a bigger impact here. And they're also, I'd say, people that, want philanthropy to be fun. We really pride ourselves on handling all the kind of headachy parts of a donor advised fund. So investing the assets, doing all the back office stuff, cutting checks, vetting nonprofits to make sure they're eligible grantees. And we really want to kind of take the donor on site visits and have events where they can see what interesting projects are going on, where they get excited about making an impact with a grant from their donor advised fund, seeing that impact, and again, not kind of worrying about the more drudgerous tasks of charitable giving.
Perfect. Sarah, back to you. What benefits do your donors get in connecting with the impact they want to have?
So I don't know if it's clear, but we hold, Birmingham Jewish Foundation holds the endowment funds, designated funds for Any Miles Jewish Day School, CJFS, the LJCC, I'm using a lot of acronyms, so the Jewish Community Center, AHEC, which is the Alabama Holocaust Education Center. So I meet with those and the Birmingham Jewish Federation, which we are the supporting foundation for. I meet with those teams regularly to know what their needs are. And so if I hear something that Lauren's working on that I know a donor is really passionate about working with seniors, I'm going to contact them to tell them about what's going on so that we can make that match. I think that's about it. I see myself as part of the team of all of those organizations. I am their endowment department, so it's a really close relationship.
George, same question. What benefits do you get? What benefits do your donors get in connecting with the impact they want to have?
So we offer a lot of opportunities for donors to learn more about stuff going on in the community, kind of getting close to the impact they want to have. And we always say, use us. We have a lot of local knowledge, a lot of relationships with the nonprofit community. Some donors are happy just having a donor advised fund and kind of telling us year after year what grants they want to make, and that's perfectly fine. But the same fee that they're paying gets a lot more kind of opportunities if they want to go deeper. So just give some examples. We have educational events throughout the year where we'll highlight different areas of interest, so donors can come to those and learn more about certain areas that they're interested in. We have, a few years ago, we did a big survey of all of our donor advised fund donors, and we heard from them that they wanted us to really lean into family philanthropy services. So when we talk about family philanthropy, we're talking about multiple generations of a family, learning how to talk across generations, finding common values, even if there's political disagreements or kind of surface level disagreements, talking about what do we want our legacy to be. And we have done a lot of work to kind of beef up those family philanthropy services. Also, we'll just do a lot of individual meetings. So if a donor comes to us and says, you know, I really care about early childhood education, but I don't really know where to start. You know, we'll meet with them, bring in some of our program staff members who really are the boots on the ground, kind of people who are in touch with different community needs. We'll take them on site visits, we'll introduce them to executive directors, kind of be their research partner. And the last thing I was going to mention, like Sarah said earlier, I think another way we connect donors with an impact is that the fee that they pay to the community foundation goes back into the community. I mean, it supports the work that we're doing to make our community better. So I think that's an important thing for both of our organizations, that compared to like a commercial donor advised fund provider, to think about fees kind of from that perspective.
So that's a great lead in to put some others on the spot and test what you're saying. So it's already been mentioned, Dave Wells, the CEO of Alabama Goodwill, and Lauren Schwartz, the executive director of Collat Jewish Family Services. So first, I guess, to test how our team did, do you have a preference between cash, appreciated securities, QCDs, donor advised funds, and any other acronym that might have been thrown out?
It's all the same to us. You know, it enables us to do more mission, and that's really what matters in the end.
We are grateful for any contributions. So we will work with what comes our way.
So I know that both these organizations have impacted y'all. So would y'all tell us a little bit about, you know, they're saying that they impact organizations. Could y'all elaborate on that?
Well, first of all, I think that's a big bill. It seems like it should be more than $100. We are very grateful for our friends at the Community Foundation. We received a grant not too long ago, and we are very grateful. And we have used the funds that we received from the Community Foundation to start up our 2 career centers in Birmingham. And these career centers provide work evaluation, work assessment, and then job preparation and job development for people that have barriers to employment. And these are barriers of all kinds. Could be someone with a disability, it could be someone with homeless, could be someone illiterate, any number, single parent, elderly, any number of barriers to employment. We bring them in and we help them to figure out what would be right for them, and then we give them work tryout to make sure that they're ready, and then we get them into a job that's going to be right for them. So we are very grateful for the support that we get from the community, and we love supporting the community of Birmingham and building the workforce development, because Birmingham isn't growing in population, and so we have to build our workforce from within. And those that don't often know about the opportunities, they're the ones that really need the help, and so those funds are very valuable to our community.
And so I would just add to that, as a community organization serving the whole community, both the Community Foundation and the Birmingham Jewish Community Foundation have supported our work. So we are a nonprofit that provides services primarily to older adults. We enable people to age in place, and we support their mental health and wellness, and we provide community connections. So, for example, the Birmingham Jewish Foundation has provided us a grant through their undesignated funds. So the funds that Sarah is talking about go back into the community, the fees that they charge, to provide our outreach services. And actually, our outreach services are now coordinating with Goodwill Industries. So one of the things that we do when we go out into subsidized housing facilities for older and disabled adults, and we talk to them about ways that they can enrich their lives. One of the things that we do is we can provide Goodwill vouchers to them, because members of our community will go and donate their items to Goodwill, and Goodwill gives us a credit. We have a partnership in that way, and then we can provide them with vouchers to go and buy household goods, clothing, and other items that they may need. So we're going out and providing education and connection and building community, and we do that through a grant from the foundation, and Goodwill enables us to further what we're doing. We also currently have a grant from the Community Foundation, and that supports our in-home care services, the expansion of our in-home care and case management services for low-income older adults. So we go in and help with things like bathing assistance, meal preparation, light housekeeping, laundry. We help people identify needs and connect to resources to meet those needs. So for example, if they don't have a primary care doc, or they have diabetes but they're not really treating their diabetes and they're not regularly getting assistance, we help coordinate those services, provide transportation to get to the doctor. I could go on and on and on. But our grant from the Community Foundation has helped us to expand those offerings in the community to have more people who are going out and providing those services. And in addition to that, a lot of that was spurred by a needs assessment for older adults that was done by the Community Foundation a number of years ago that really identified that that was a need in the community. It was a barrier for older adults to age in the community. So both of these foundations have really helped us. The Birmingham Jewish Foundation holds our endowment funds, and that really has provided us the financial stability that we need to be able to move into the future in a healthy and stable way. So because we have endowment funds that are available to us, we think of that as a savings account. It is money that is stashed away for us, but like your investment partners are doing for you, it can also provide us a part of our annual budget. So we receive about $200,000 a year that goes into our annual budget based on the funds that we have in our endowment funds. So we can depend on that every year, and the foundation manages that for us.
Thank you all. Yeah, so although BCR is involved with all these organizations, I had forgotten how interwoven these organizations were, even though I knew all those things at one point. So thank you for that reminding me as well. George, why don't you tell us a little bit about events your donors get to attend and meet like-minded people to learn more about theirs and back. And you may have already spoken about that, but.
Yeah, I can just give a few examples of some events. We've been on a big bus tour kick the last few years. So this year we took donors on a kind of a greenways bus tour, different parks and natural resources, and kind of highlighted the importance of green space and natural resources to our region. Last year we did a bus tour of Titusville and highlighted several organizations in that community that are doing really important work. Year before that we did a Cahaba Lilies tour, kind of at the peak of Cahaba Lilies season. And then one other thing I'll mention, my colleague Carly Mataka, who's back there, runs our Giving Together program, which is really special. The Community Foundation, in addition to facilitating personal philanthropy for our donors, we also manage an unrestricted endowment that we make grants out of twice a year. And as part of that process, when we're ready to make grants and kind of have identified worthy projects, we always have a shortfall of what we want to fund and how much we have available for distributions. And we'll invite all of our donor advised fund holders to come to a luncheon, get a sneak peek at some of the really exciting projects that are going on, and invite them to co-fund our grants and kind of co-invest with us from their donor advised fund. So it's a way to kind of, again, just learn about interesting stuff happening in the community and make a bigger impact by partnering with our grant making.
So the team talked about the benefit of giving securities, but that's not really the only thing you can give. Jake mentioned that you have a big sale of a business or something like that, and so you can give a portion of that to your donor advised fund, and then when the sale happens, both sides get the cash. Can you tell me, beyond cash, public traded securities, George, what kind of interesting things?
Yeah, so we pride ourselves on trying to accept any type of asset somebody wants to give us. Of course, we have to think we can find a way to turn it into cash. But we accept a lot of like private business interests, real estate, life insurance policies. In terms of kind of some fun stories, before my time, there's I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently somebody gifted us a hotel in Latvia. Chris is nodding back there, so it must be true. And the legend tells that it took a long time to sell that hotel, and that the day we finally did, the whole staff just drank champagne all day to celebrate. And then I also worked with a donor that had like a historic gun collection as part of his estate, and so luckily there was a executor who kind of figured out what to do with that, but we were prepared to accept it and try to figure out how to sell it. So,
Sarah, anything that you would add? Interesting things to donate beyond cash?
The only thing I can share is we cannot accept livestock. Someone tried to donate a camel years ago to us and couldn't accept it. I don't know who has a camel in Birmingham, but
Sarah, tell me about a time that the impact a donor was able to achieve kind of excited you.
Can we go back to one thing that we may have skipped?
Yeah, I know. I missed a question I was supposed to ask you.
Well, because I was going to include it in a different one, and anyways.
You've done well with me messing up. No one else noticed until now.
Until I said, sorry, Mom. My mom's on FaceTime right now. One of the things that differentiates our foundation to the community foundation is our donor advised funds start at $2,500. And the reason it starts at such a low amount is because we believe philanthropy should be accessible to most anyone. And so our minimums are just a lot smaller. So if you know anyone who wanted to open up a smaller donor advised fund and get started, we can help you with that. So we even have the policy that you can go below your minimum. We just ask for you to replenish it within 6 months. So we're pretty flexible when it comes to those things. And then you wanted me to answer about impact too?
Yeah,
okay.
Thank you for getting back to that. But yes, real quick again, tell me about a time that the impacted donor was able to have through your organization excited you.
All right. I'm going to answer that slightly different. This year, I got to witness the utilization of a fund we've had since the 80s. It's called the UAB Israel Medical Exchange. And we had doctors at UAB who worked before October 7th with a hospital in Israel. It's called Sheba Medical Center. And Sheba and Israel is about to be dealing with a major shortage in clinical spots for medical residents. And so Sheba is trying to figure out how to make more spots. So they created a second shift is what they call it. But they wanted to come to UAB to see how they teach here. So they came in March, and they got to experience everything UAB has to offer, did rounds, learned all that stuff. So right now we're creating this partnership with Sheba and UAB so they can learn from each other. And for someone who's passionate about Israel, it was just really special to see how we were helping people back there, because 95% of the hostages and soldiers go to Sheba Medical to get treated when they after they leave the war zones. So I wanted to share that story because I think it's really special that we had donors create this fund back in the 80s so that we could learn from each other. And what's great is some UAB doctors are going to be going to Sheba next year so they can be learning from what they're doing there. So that was the story I wanted to share.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We've primarily focused on the donors and current giving. But can you tell us a little bit about the options donors have to include future generations and legacy planning?
You know, this is where George and I have very similar rules. We can have as many generations of recommenders on your donor advised funds that you want. George taught me that there are foundations out there that you can only have one set and then it goes back into sort of their pool. You can have as many as you want, and then we could set up rules so that your donor advised fund turns into a restricted fund for either an agency or a field of study. So field of study would be like leadership development, and then an organization would be like CJFS. So the sky's the limit when it comes to that, but what we really want to do is have conversations, as George was talking about, with the families, with multi-generations, to talk about either if you're going to leave it to your kids to be putting out all the recommendations from the donor advised fund, we want to have those conversations with them. And also, we have a program where we start donor advised funds for 13-year-olds. And those funds turn into full donor advised funds at some point. And now we're working with 20s and 30-year-olds. Some live in Birmingham, but most are out of the state in New York and in California, and they're still supporting the Birmingham Jewish community, and it's really touching. So.
Thank you. Hopefully, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, well, I was just just to echo, but I had an example of kind of like the type of thing you can do with succession planning for your donor advised fund. Just a really cool donor that I've worked with since I've started the Community Foundation. He has a donor advised fund, and then the succession plan he's created is that at his death, it'll turn into like a permanently endowed legacy fund. And it's going to support 3 different areas of interest, and each one is in honor of one of his 3 children. So his daughter, who works at the CDC in Atlanta, in honor of her, it's going to support public health initiatives. And then he has a son who struggled with addiction, so it's going to support addiction prevention and support services. And then the 3rd child, he's in construction, and he was kind of had trouble with kind of the traditional college path that he was expected to go through, and the trades were a lot better fit for him. So the 3rd area is funding. It's like for rural high school students who want to enter the trades. So any balance in his donor advised fund is going to turn into that, and then also he's going to leave an additional estate gift to add to that legacy fund. So just kind of I just thought that was a really cool thing for that donor to do, and I wanted to share that.
Thank you. Wow. Hopefully you guys understand why we enjoy working with all these organizations and why we're so passionate about this and appreciate having so many people who are interested in hearing about this topic and so many clients that are so charitable that we get to work with. Did y'all have any questions that y'all would like to ask them?
I have a question. What are the current rules about giving from IRAs to donor advised funds? Because I think you're not allowed to do that, but I don't really understand why.
Because that money hasn't been taxed yet. Mm-hmm. And so you can't then give it to us to put in a donor advised fund, which will never, the government will never see a dime of that taxes. At least that's how it's been taught to me.
Yeah, I've just learned that we don't know why that is. I mean, because, it can go to any other fund type that we have, but not a donor advised fund. Yes, Chris.
The reason for that was in, I think it was 2004 or 2006, when they made this law, there were some bad actors in national foundations, not community foundations or Jewish Federation, that were abusing donor advised funds, so they excluded donor advised funds. Subsequently, it's cleaned, the field has cleaned up, And there's legislation that is hopefully going to be enacted to allow it to go to donor advised funds.
So I've been asked to repeat the question. So the question is, for those who can't hear it since we've got these mics, why can't you, or is there details on contributing from an IRA to a donor advised fund? And I think everyone could hear y'all's part. If you couldn't hear Chris's part, there were some bad actors, and so they eliminated that.
Can you clarify, is that like at death on a beneficiary designation form? Is that a QCD? Is that all of it?
A QCD.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Sarah and I mean, we've talked about, both our organizations have some workarounds. So like for a lot of our donor advised fund holders who want to use a QCD, we'll set up like a designated fund for them, and they can name, I want y'all, Community Foundation, to distribute the balance of this fund to these charities over this amount of time. So there's kind of ways to work around it, but we do hope that donor advised funds just become included in that soon. Yeah.
Other questions?
I'm not sure this has any bearing. I'm just curious about how many active, I guess, living donors or clients do y'all both have within the funds?
How many donors do y'all have within all the different funds?
That's a great question. I just counted up all of our funds, which we have 415 of them at our foundation, and like 250 are donor advised funds. So you can imagine the donor advised funds all have living donors. The designated funds don't, so it's hard for, I think those numbers will just be helpful.
Yeah, we have, it's about 560 different component funds across fund types, and I think maybe 350 or 300-ish, somewhere in that, are donor advised funds. And like Sarah said, a lot of those donor advised funds have multiple generations involved. So I don't know a number of people, but
yeah. That is ballpark. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is probably in your booklet, which I haven't had a chance to read. What is the starting amount to open a donor advised fund in the community foundation?
What's the starting amount to open a donor advised fund
In the community
foundation?
It's $15,000. Yeah.
Chris.
Yes, Chris.
Do you have to distribute annually out of a donor advised fund?
Do you have to distribute annually out of a donor advised
Private
fund?
foundation, and what are the advantages of a donor advised fund over a private foundation?
So someone in the audience asked, what are the advantages of a donor advised fund over a private foundation?
Good job.
So there are a couple advantages. One is, with a private foundation, you have to hire an attorney, hire an accountant, do all that kind of, again, the non-fun parts of philanthropy in-house and pay all those expenses. Another disadvantage of private foundations are there's a 5% minimum distribution every year of the balance of the private foundation. There are no distribution requirements for a donor advised fund, even though we internally do have policies to encourage donors to keep their funds active and not just let money sit there, but to be deployed into the community. Another advantage some people like is that donor advised fund grants are anonymous, whereas private foundation distributions are not. So those are a handful of advantages.
Other questions?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the fees that y'all administer that stay and kind of come back into the local philanthropic scene? With the donor advised fund being held locally, can you give outside of your community with a donor advised fund? And do you have donors that live outside of Birmingham that do that and utilize that way? Either.
So our donor advised funds can be used anywhere. International donations are a challenge, which we can go into detail if we really wanted to. The only lens, we have a lens. We like to say we have a lens. something George and there's a difference in. We look to make sure that it's aligned with our mission, and the one area I can say that where we have not sent donations out is if they don't, they can't. I'm trying to come up with my words. They can't be in opposition of the state of Israel in its existence. So if there's anything in their values, their mission that is that doesn't believe that Israel should be a country, we have not sent donations. Otherwise, it doesn't matter.
Church, mosque, it doesn't really matter.
Does not matter.
You donate to anybody, just not Hamas. I think it's
correct.
What you're trying to say and don't
yes.
want to say.
Thank you.
Other questions?